The vast chamber of the Galactic Senate fell silent as the holographic display activated. Hundreds of alien representatives from across the known universe watched with interest as images of a blue-green planet appeared before them. Earth, announced Speaker Tull, his forearms gesturing to the display. Home to a species that calls themselves humans. Our observation teams have monitored them for 50 cycles. They have achieved space travel, unified global communication, and show promising scientific advancement. The gathered senators murmured among themselves. Earth represented a potential new member of their peaceful alliance. I propose we initiate first contact, continued Tull. They appear ready to join our community of worlds. The vote was swift and unanimous. Contact would be made. 3 days later, massive ships appeared in Earth's skies above major cities. Unlike the chaos depicted in human fiction, the actual first contact proceeded with remarkable calm. World leaders gathered at the United Nations headquarters in New York as the Senate delegation landed. Speaker Tull led the 12-member contact team. Their varied forms, some insectoid, others reptilian, a few almost humanoid, caused a stir among the human security forces. But the aliens came bearing gifts of knowledge and technology, extending hands, or tentacles, or paws, in friendship. We welcome Earth to join our galactic community, Tull announced through a translation device. For 10,000 years, the Senate has maintained peace and prosperity across dozens of star systems. We believe your species could benefit from our alliance. President Martinez of the Global Coalition stepped forward. On behalf of humanity, we are honored by your invitation. The proceedings were broadcast worldwide. Humans everywhere celebrated. Their long-held questions about life beyond Earth finally answered. Stock markets soared, religious leaders issued statements of unity, and children gazed skyward with new dreams. Behind closed doors, the Senate representatives explained their proposal. Earth would enter a 50-year probationary period before full membership. During this time, human representatives would live on Senate Station Alpha to learn galactic law, customs, and history. We also request a military liaison, added Tull. Though the Senate has known peace for millennia, we maintain defensive capabilities. We wish to understand your protective forces. The world's military powers convened an emergency meeting. After heated debate, they selected Captain James Walker of the United Nations Peacekeeping Force. At 42, Walker had served in conflicts across Earth and commanded respect from military leaders worldwide. Walker received the news in his apartment overlooking the Hudson River. The decorated captain stood silently by his window, watching the alien ships hover above the city. "Why me?" he asked the military officials who delivered his new orders. "You understand combat, but prefer peace," replied General Kimura. "You speak 7 languages and adapt quickly to unfamiliar situations. Most importantly, you see the big picture." 1 week later, Walker boarded the Senate transport vessel. He carried little, some clothes, books, and a small wooden box containing soil from his childhood home. As Earth shrank below him, he felt both excitement and unease. Captain Walker greeted Tull as he entered the ship's main chamber. "We have much to show you." "I'm eager to learn," Walker replied, masking his inner thoughts. The ship accelerated beyond Earth's orbit, engaging its faster-than-light drive. In a flash of blue light, they departed the solar system, humanity's first citizen venturing into the galactic community. Neither Walker nor the Senate representatives could have predicted how quickly their peaceful exchange would unravel, or how the Senate would come to fear the very species they had just welcomed. 3 months into Walker's stay at Senate Station Alpha, the emergency alarms blared through every corridor. Red lights flashed as senators and staff hurried to the main chamber. Walker followed the crowd, noting how unpracticed they seemed during the emergency. No one moved with urgency or purpose. Speaker Tull stood at the center platform, his normally calm demeanor replaced with visible distress. "We have received an urgent transmission from Colony Epsilon," Tull announced as the chamber quieted. "They are under attack by ships belonging to the Ravagers." The holographic display activated, showing a small agricultural world. Several dark ships hovered over its main settlement. Explosions dotted the surface. "Who are the Ravagers?" Walker asked Senator Krell, who sat beside him. "A non-Senate species from the outer systems," Krell explained, his skin pulsing with anxious orange patterns. "They raid occasionally for resources, but never so boldly." The Senate watched in horror as the attack continued. Colony defenders fired weak defensive weapons that barely damaged the Ravager ships. "We must send assistance immediately," declared a senator from the affected region. Within hours, the Senate dispatched its defense fleet. Walker requested permission to observe the response but was politely denied. "This is Senate business," Toll told him. "We have protocols for such situations." Walker returned to his quarters, frustrated. Through his connections with the station's crew, he managed to access reports from the conflict. What he saw deeply troubled him. The Senate fleet had superior technology, but used it ineffectively. Their ships maintained predictable formations. They announced their intentions before attacking. They even warned the Ravagers to withdraw before engaging. The Ravagers, in contrast, fought with cunning and ruthlessness. 3 days later, the surviving Senate ships returned. They had driven off the Ravagers, but at heavy cost. Nearly 40% of their vessels were destroyed or heavily damaged. Walker requested a meeting with the Defense Council. 5 senior senators received him in a private chamber. "Your tactics were predictable," Walker stated bluntly. "The Ravagers exploited your formations and your hesitation. We followed standard peacekeeping protocols," argued Council Leader Vin, a gaunt being with silvery skin. "We always offer the chance for enemies to withdraw." "That works with reasonable opponents," Walker countered. "These Ravagers clearly aren't reasonable. They used your predictability against you." Walker displayed tactical simulations he had created, showing alternative approaches. The council members watched with growing discomfort. "These maneuvers are aggressive," noted Vin. "You suggest attacking without warning." "In certain situations, yes," Walker confirmed. "Sometimes overwhelming force saves lives on both sides by ending conflicts quickly." The council thanked Walker for his input, but made no commitments to change their approach. He left the meeting certain his advice would be ignored. Over the next month, Ravager attacks increased. 3 more colonies suffered raids, each more devastating than the last. The Senate's responses followed the same ineffective patterns. In the main cafeteria, Walker overheard station personnel discussing the situation. "They've never faced an enemy like this," said one worker. "The Senate hasn't fought a real war in thousands of years." "Maybe the human could help," suggested another. "Their species seems to understand fighting." Walker found himself increasingly isolated. Some senators avoided him entirely. Others studied him with newfound interest, as if suddenly recognizing the predator in their midst. During a private dinner, Senator Krell admitted the truth. "The Council fears your suggestions because they recognize their effectiveness. The tactics you propose go against everything the Senate believes about conflict resolution." "But they would work," Walker insisted. "Yes," Krell agreed, his skin darkening to a solemn blue. "And that is precisely what frightens them." As reports arrived of yet another colony under attack, Walker realized the Senate faced a critical choice: maintain their peaceful ideals and continue to suffer losses, or embrace humanity's darker knowledge of warfare. Either way, the consequences would reshape the galactic community forever. The diplomatic quarter of Senate Station Alpha buzzed with activity. Human ambassadors had finally arrived to begin formal negotiations for Earth's probationary membership. Walker stood at attention in his dress uniform, watching as 20 human representatives were welcomed with elaborate ceremony. Ambassador Chen, the lead human diplomat, delivered a gracious speech about cooperation and mutual advancement. The Senate representatives applauded politely. For a moment, the ongoing Ravager crisis seemed forgotten in the glow of new friendship. That night, Walker showed the human delegation to their quarters in the diplomatic wing. Unlike his military-style room, their accommodations featured large windows overlooking the swirling nebula outside the station. "Quite a view," remarked Ambassador Chen, gazing out at the stars. "Have you made progress with the Senate's military council?" Walker shook his head. "They listen, but they don't understand. They've been at peace too long." A warning klaxon cut through their conversation. Walker recognized the sound immediately, not the general alarm, but the proximity alert for unauthorized vessels. The station's communication system activated. "Attention all residents. Unknown ships approaching. This is not a drill. Please proceed to designated safety areas." Walker's military comm unit buzzed. "Captain Walker, report to Defense Control immediately." "Stay here," he ordered the ambassadors. "Lock the doors." Walker sprinted through corridors already filling with confused aliens. In Defense Control, chaos reigned. Senate security officers moved without purpose, checking screens and repeating the same information to each other. "What's happening?" Walker demanded. Commander Voth turned to him, all 6 eyes blinking rapidly. "Ravager ships. They've never attacked the station before. We're trying to contact them." Walker scanned the tactical display. 5 Ravager vessels had disabled the outer sensor ring and were approaching the station's diplomatic section. "They're not here to talk," Walker said. "They're targeting our new arrivals, the humans." Voth hesitated. "We must follow protocols. Warning messages have been sent." Walker didn't wait for permission. He accessed the station's internal systems and opened a channel to the human quarters. "Ambassador Chen, arm yourselves. Ravagers are boarding near your position." To Voth's horror, Walker grabbed a weapon from the security locker. "I need 4 of your officers with me." "Captain Walker, we cannot authorize." The station shuddered as explosions rocked the diplomatic wing. On the monitors, breach alarms flashed. The Ravagers had entered the station. Walker ran toward the diplomatic wing, followed by 2 security officers brave enough to disobey their commander. They arrived to find the corridor filled with smoke. 3 Ravagers, tall, gray-skinned creatures in segmented armor, were forcing their way through the reinforced door of the human quarters. Without hesitation, Walker fired. His shot struck the lead Ravager in the joint between armor plates. The creature howled and turned, revealing rows of sharp teeth. The Senate security officers froze at the sight. Ambassador Chen's voice came through Walker's comm. "We've barricaded the main door, but they're breaking through the service entrance." Walker ducked as Ravager weapons fire scorched the wall behind him. He rolled to new cover, firing with precision rather than panic. 1 Ravager fell, then another. The 3rd charged him directly. Walker stood his ground, waited until the last moment, then sidestepped. As the Ravager's momentum carried it past, Walker struck with his weapon's reinforced stock. The creature crashed into the wall. More Ravagers poured from a second breach. Walker accessed the emergency controls and sealed a fire barrier, cutting off half their forces. Then he led his small team toward the ambassador's quarters. Inside, they found the human diplomats had created defensive positions using furniture. 3 Ravagers lay dead. Ambassador Chen held an improvised weapon fashioned from a broken table leg. "They came through there." Chen pointed to a service entrance. "More are coming." Walker organized the humans rapidly. Some would protect the injured. Others formed a defensive perimeter. His military training took over, and the diplomats, who had all received basic combat training as part of Earth's preparation, responded instantly to his commands. Senate Station Alpha appeared before them as the transport ship exited from faster-than-light travel. Walker pressed his hand against the viewport, unable to hide his amazement. The station resembled a massive wheel with spokes extending from a central hub, each section glowing with different colored lights. Hundreds of ships moved around it like bees around a hive. "Impressive, isn't it?" asked Tull, standing beside him. "Over 30 species call this station home. Some live here permanently, others visit as representatives." The ship docked with a gentle bump. Walker gathered his few belongings and followed Tull through the airlock. The gravity felt slightly lighter than Earth's, making his steps bouncy and awkward. "You'll adjust soon," Tull assured him. The main concourse bustled with alien life. Walker tried not to stare, but the diversity overwhelmed him. Tall, willowy beings with translucent skin floated rather than walked. Small, furry creatures with 6 legs scurried between the larger aliens. One species appeared to be made entirely of crystalline structures that chimed softly as they moved. "Your quarters are in the human adaptation zone," explained Tull. "We've adjusted the atmosphere, gravity, and lighting to Earth standards." Walker nodded, though he felt disappointed. He wanted to experience everything, not hide in an Earth-like bubble. That evening, Walker attended his first Senate session. The chamber curved in a perfect half-circle, with hundreds of seats arranged in rising tiers. Each species had its own section, modified for their physical needs. Speaker Tull introduced Walker to the gathered Senate. Many senators nodded respectfully, though Walker noticed a few seemed to study him with unusual intensity. After the session, an elderly senator approached him. Senator Krell resembled a giant tortoise with bright purple eyes and skin that shifted colors as he spoke. "Join me for dinner, Captain," Krell offered. "I study your species for years." In Krell's private dining room, Walker sampled strange but delicious foods while listening to the senator's insights. "The Senate has existed for over 12,000 years," Krell explained. "Most member species evolved toward cooperation rather than competition. Conflict is rare among us." "No wars?" Walker asked, finding this hard to believe. "The last major conflict ended 4,000 years ago," Krell replied. "Most disagreements are settled through negotiation. Our natural tendencies lean toward harmony. And humans, how do we compare?" Krell's skin flickered with blue patterns. Walker would later learn this indicated concern. "Your species is unusual. Your history contains almost constant warfare. Even during periods of relative peace, you train for combat. It's fascinating." Over the next few weeks, Walker explored the station and met representatives from dozens of worlds. He attended cultural exchanges, diplomatic functions, and technical briefings. Everywhere he went, he noticed the same thing. These species truly didn't understand conflict as humans did. In the station's historical archive, Walker studied Senate records. The alien cultures had evolved with minimal predators on their homeworlds. Few had experienced the harsh evolutionary pressures that shaped human development. During a military exchange, Walker demonstrated basic human combat techniques to a group of Senate security officials. Their reactions ranged from confusion to horror. "Why would you strike with such force?" asked the chief security officer, a tall being named Voth. "Your techniques seem designed to maximize damage." "Because in a real fight, that's how you survive," Walker answered honestly. Voth's 6 eyes blinked rapidly. "But surely negotiation is preferable." "Not always possible," Walker said. That night, Walker couldn't sleep. He stood at his window, watching the stars. He was beginning to understand that humans weren't just another species joining the Senate. They were fundamentally different in ways that might prove problematic. What the Senate saw as humanity's violent nature, Walker knew as survival instinct, a drive that had kept his species alive through countless challenges. But would the peaceful Senate ever understand this? Or would they only see the danger? The emergency medical bay buzzed with activity. Doctors from 6 different species tended to the wounded, both human and Senate security personnel. Walker sat on an examination table while a medical officer treated a deep cut across his forearm. "You fought effectively," the doctor commented, applying a healing gel that immediately numbed the pain. "We did what was necessary," Walker replied. Through the glass partition, he could see Ambassador Chen arguing with Speaker Tull and several other Senate officials. Their body language told him everything. The Senate representatives stood with unusual stiffness, maintaining extra distance from the humans. The station-wide alert had ended 2 hours ago. The remaining Ravager ships retreated after their boarding parties failed to return. For now, Senate Station Alpha was secure, but the political fallout was just beginning. Commander Voth entered the medical bay, approaching Walker with visible caution. "The High Council requests your presence," he said formally. "Now." Walker followed Voth through corridors where station residents pressed themselves against walls as he passed. Word had spread quickly about the humans' defense against the Ravagers. In the council chamber, 50 senior senators sat in a perfect circle. Ambassador Chen and 3 other human diplomats stood in the center, looking confused and concerned. "Captain Walker," announced the council leader, an ancient being named Morax, whose species communicated through shifting color patterns across their translucent skin. "Please join your colleagues." Walker took his place beside Chen, noting the armed security officers positioned at every exit. "The Senate has convened this emergency session to address the incident," Morax continued, flashing patterns of deep purple and red that the translator interpreted as extreme concern. "We have reviewed all security footage of the Ravager attack." The main display activated, showing highlights of the humans defending themselves. Walker watched the recording with professional detachment, but he could see the senators' reactions ranging from shock to disgust. "In 4,000 years of Senate history," said another council member, "we have never witnessed such violence within these chambers." Ambassador Chen stepped forward. "With respect, we were defending ourselves against armed intruders. Would you have preferred we surrendered?" "The question is not what you did, but how you did it," replied Morax. "The efficiency, the coordination, the eagerness." Eagerness. Walker couldn't remain silent. "We were fighting for our lives." "That is precisely our concern," said Morax. "When threatened, your species becomes something else entirely. Something dangerous." The council displayed more footage, close-ups of human faces during combat. Walker recognized his own expression, focused, determined, but not fearful. To the Senate species, accustomed to flight responses and conflict avoidance, the human capacity to function effectively during violence appeared alien and terrifying. "The Council has voted," announced Morax. "Human membership in the Senate is suspended, effective immediately." Ambassador Chen gasped. "On what grounds?" "Security concerns," replied Morax. "All humans will be restricted to designated areas of the station until transport to Earth can be arranged." "You're expelling us because we defended ourselves?" Chen asked incredulously. "We are protecting our community," corrected a council member. "Your species possesses instincts and abilities that pose an unacceptable risk." Walker stepped forward. "The Ravagers are still out there. They'll attack again, and next time they'll be better prepared. You need us." Silence filled the chamber. Finally, Morax's skin shifted to a pattern Walker had never seen before, bands of white against deep blue. "Perhaps we do," admitted Morax. "But the danger you represent cannot be ignored. The Senate was founded on principles of peace and cooperation. Your natural instincts run counter to everything we believe." As Walker and the human delegation were escorted to their restricted quarters, Senator Krell approached them briefly. "Not everyone agrees with the Council's decision," he whispered. "Some of us recognize that the galaxy is changing. The peace we've known may require defenders." "Will they listen?" Walker asked. Krell's skin darkened. "They might, after the Ravagers strike again." The humans were led away, now viewed not as allies, but as weapons too dangerous to wield. 2 weeks passed in forced isolation. The human delegation remained confined to a small section of Senate Station Alpha, their communications with Earth severely restricted. Walker paced his quarters like a caged animal, reviewing reports of Ravager attacks that grew bolder each day. A soft chime announced a visitor. The door slid open to reveal Senator Krell, his skin pulsing with nervous green patterns. "Captain Walker, I come unofficially," Krell said, glancing down the empty corridor. "The situation has worsened." Krell activated a small projector showing tactical displays of Senate space. Red markers indicated Ravager activity spreading across formerly peaceful sectors. 3 more colonies attacked in the past week," Krell explained. "The Ravagers have adapted to our defense strategies. They now target our ships' predictable formations." Walker studied the display, noting the classic signs of an enemy growing more confident. They're testing your responses, finding patterns in your tactics. The Defense Council is paralyzed by indecision, Krell admitted. Our casualties mount while they debate. Why are you telling me this? Walker asked, though he already suspected the answer. A group of senators believes we need alternative approaches. Krell's skin flickered with anxiety. We wish to bring humans into this conflict, unofficially. That evening, Walker and Ambassador Chen met secretly with 12 senators in an unused maintenance section. The senators represented colonies either already attacked or directly in the Ravager's path. The Council refuses to change our defensive protocols, explained Senator Trill, who had lost family in a recent attack. They fear becoming like the enemy. They fear becoming like us, Chen corrected gently. Yes, admitted Trill, but we fear extinction more. Their proposal was simple yet radical. They would arrange transport for Walker to return to Earth and request specialized military assistance. These forces would operate outside Senate oversight, but with the support of the 12 senators who called themselves the Practical Coalition. 3 days later, Walker departed on a private vessel. The official story claimed he was being sent home as a gesture of diplomatic reconciliation. On Earth, military leaders received Walker's briefing with intense interest. The prospect of humans positioning themselves as the galaxy's defenders appealed to many. Within a week, Operation Guardian was approved. A small force of 300 specialized troops and 5 modified combat vessels prepared for deployment. They were veteran soldiers, experienced in asymmetric warfare and unconventional tactics. Their orders: protect Senate colonies from Ravager attacks without revealing themselves as human. When Walker returned to Senate space, he brought these forces to an abandoned mining outpost provided by Senator Krell. There, they established a hidden base from which to monitor Ravager movements. Their first intervention came at Colony Meridian. Senate defenders followed their standard approach, announcing their presence, forming predictable patterns, and broadcasting warnings. The Ravagers, as expected, moved to exploit these weaknesses. Then human ships struck from hiding. They targeted the Ravagers' command vessels first, using unpredictable attack vectors. On the ground, human special forces protected colonists with ruthless efficiency. The Ravagers, accustomed to fighting the hesitant Senate forces, found themselves outmatched. The Senate Defense Council was baffled by reports from Meridian. The Ravagers had been driven back with minimal colonial casualties, yet no Senate forces claimed responsibility for the unusual tactics. Over the next month, human forces secretly intervened in 6 more attacks. Each time, they refined their approach, studying Ravager weaknesses. They discovered the Ravagers relied heavily on intimidation and rarely faced determined resistance. The Practical Coalition senators protected Walker's secret while quietly providing resources and intelligence. Each successful defense brought more senators to their side. In a secure communication room, Walker received updated intelligence from Earth. New human ships were being prepared, specifically designed to counter Ravager technology. We're making progress, Walker told Ambassador Chen during an encrypted call. But eventually, the full Senate will discover what we're doing. By then, Chen replied, they'll have to acknowledge they need us. Walker stared at the tactical display showing the latest Ravager movements. Something had changed. The scattered attacks were now concentrating, forming a pattern that chilled him. They're not just raiders, he realized. They're organizing for a major assault. The real war was about to begin, and humanity's true fighting capabilities would soon be impossible to hide. Red emergency lights bathed Senate Station Alpha's main chamber. Hundreds of senators gathered in stunned silence as the tactical display showed 50 Ravager warships approaching the Centauri system, home to 3 heavily populated Senate worlds. Our defense fleet cannot repel an attack of this magnitude, announced Defense Commander Voth, his 6 eyes blinking rapidly in distress. Evacuation is impossible. Millions will be lost. Speaker Tull turned to the Practical Coalition senators. You claim to have alternative solutions. Now is the time to present them. Senator Krull stepped forward, his skin pulsing with determined blue patterns. We have been working with human military advisors. They have a plan. Outrage erupted across the chamber. The council leader Morax flashed angry red. You violated our explicit restrictions. To save lives, countered Krell. And it has worked. The humans have defeated Ravagers at 7 colonies already. Before more arguments could erupt, the main doors opened. Captain Walker entered, followed by Ambassador Chen and Earth's military commander, General Rivera. The human delegation approached the center of the chamber with measured steps. The Ravagers have united under a war leader, Walker explained without preamble. This is no longer about raiding. They intend to conquer Senate space. General Rivera activated her own tactical display. We have 5 combat vessels and special forces teams positioned near Centauri. With your permission, we will engage the Ravager fleet. 5 ships against 50, asked a doubtful senator. Human ships, Rivera replied simply, and human tactics. After heated debate, desperation overcame fear. The Senate granted temporary authorization for human forces to defend Centauri. Walker joined the human command ship position behind Centauri's 3rd moon. From this hidden position, they watched the Senate's defense fleet form its traditional formation and quickly get decimated by the superior Ravager numbers. Execute Operation Thunderstrike, ordered General Rivera. 5 human vessels moved with coordination that looked chaotic, but followed a careful plan. They targeted the Ravagers' command and communication ships, disrupting their ability to coordinate. Human fighters deployed from the larger vessels, attacking with unpredictable patterns that confused Ravager gunners. On the colony surfaces, human special forces led evacuations while establishing defensive positions around critical infrastructure. They didn't hesitate to make hard choices, sacrificing buildings to create fire breaks against Ravager landing parties. The battle lasted 17 hours. When it ended, 37 Ravager ships were destroyed or captured. The remaining 13 fled, their organized attacks shattered. Human forces suffered losses, but the colony stood safe. In the Senate chamber, the mood was complex. Relief mingled with a deeper understanding of what they had witnessed. The humans saved millions, Senator Krell reminded the council. Without them, Centauri would be lost. Speaker Tull nodded slowly. Yes, but at what cost to our principles? The violence we witnessed was necessary, finished Walker, who stood with bandaged wounds from the battle. The galaxy isn't always peaceful. Sometimes protection requires force. For 3 days, the Senate debated humanity's place in their community. Finally, a resolution emerged. Human representatives were invited to the chamber to hear the decision. The Senate recognizes that peaceful cooperation alone cannot protect our civilization, announced Speaker Tull. Therefore, we create a new classification for humanity, Guardian Species. The terms were carefully crafted. Humans would serve as the military arm of the Senate, protecting member worlds from external threats. However, strict oversight would ensure human forces operated within ethical boundaries set by the Senate. Most importantly, humans would be full members of the galactic community, but with special restrictions and responsibilities that acknowledge their unique nature. Walker stood on an observation deck later, watching ships come and go from the station. Ambassador Chen joined him. Not quite the welcome we expected, Chen remarked. But perhaps the role we're best suited for, Walker replied. They need what we can do, even if it frightens them. The first human military training center opened on Senate Station Beta 3 months later. Senate security forces lined up nervously to learn from their new protectors. Walker, now appointed as chief military liaison, addressed the mixed group. You fear what we are, he told them honestly. You should. But remember, that fear is now what protects you. Across Senate space, humans found their place, respected, feared, but ultimately necessary. The species that had almost been banned had become the foundation of a new galactic security. The Senate had watched humanity fight once and recognized not just the danger, but the promise of a guardian willing to stand between civilization and chaos.